Morning, good morning, good morning. I'm hopefully live this morning on Facebook in the Business Growth community, on my LinkedIn profile and on YouTube. So good morning to all of you, wherever you are watching from. I'm going to have a very quick squiz down here. Oh, I'm there already. I can see me. Fab. I was going to double check I was live in the right place and I can already see it. How fabulous is that? So this morning, I want to talk about different personality types. And this might sound a bit of a quirky topic, and you might be asking, why would a business coach talk about this? Why am I not talking about strategy and sales and pricing and all that other kind of stuff? But actually what I find is, morning Sarah, what I find is that personality types comes up very frequently with my own clients. And it tends to go up in two different ways. It can often be a client who's having a real challenge with one of their own customers. They feel like the customer is being awkward, or perhaps they feel like there is some friction there. But it almost seems like what was a fabulous relationship has just gone a bit pear-shaped and they can't work out why. And very often it's just down to different communication styles, and communication styles stem from personality styles. And often when we work out the right communication style and the right personality style, then things like persuading an awkward customer to pay an invoice can suddenly become much easier. It also frequently comes up when somebody is dealing with a potential new customer. And what so often happens is that everything seems to be going swimmingly. Customer seems really interested. They've asked all the right questions. They've made all the right noises. And then suddenly at the last minute, they want some time to think about it, or they want to go and talk to somebody else about it. And what looked like an absolutely in the bag, amazing new customer has suddenly turned to dust. So I do talk to my clients about this quite a lot, and I thought it would be useful to share some of my favourite hints and tips about it with you today. So I'm going to explain the 4 primary personality types, and I'm going to talk to you today about what each of those personality types is looking for in terms of information, communication and decision making. And the purpose of all of this is to help you to understand how to much more kind of easily and smoothly generate sales with these lovely people, but also how to keep them happy so that you keep your customer service much smoother as well. So that's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to walk you through the 4 different types, and then I'm going to tell you how to make more sales, how to give better service, just how to make the whole thing in your business much smoother and much more fabulous. So the profiling tool that I use with my clients is something that's called DISC. There are lots of different profiling tools out there. Myers-Briggs is probably one of the most famous, although I have to admit I find Myers-Briggs is actually a bit overly complicated. Everybody gets 4 different letters and you're supposed to remember what each one is, and then my 4 letters don't match your 4 letters, and how am I supposed to constantly remember all these 4 characteristics? For me, it's really overwhelming. You might have heard things like insights. There are some really simple ones that just use colours. So the one that I use is called DISC. They all kind of they're all very similar. So if you've used one of them or come across one of them, hopefully what I talk about today will all still make sense. Good morning, Helen. I have just realised I meant to put LinkedIn on my phone, because I only twigged after a little while that comments on LinkedIn don't come through to me here on the platform that I use to broadcast from. So I don't actually get to see anybody's comments on LinkedIn as we go through live. So I don't know whether I can actually see it on here. Show all my activity. Can I see it? I can't see my live on there. Oh, yes, I can. Fab. Right, I've got it on there. Oh, there is a comment. Oh, now I'm reading back. Oh, Tom Evans. Good morning, Tom. Thank you. I'm going to keep you over there so I can hopefully keep track of any comments that come through on LinkedIn as well. So, oh, and I've got a hello there. I can't tell who hello there is that's just come through on Facebook. So if that person could let me know, that would be fab. Anyway, I will crack on. I'm conscious of starting to ramble. We don't want to do that. So DISC is the profiling tool that I use. And what that essentially says, the total oversimplification, is that there are 4 classic personality types. Now, the key thing to bear in mind with this is that none of these personality types are good or bad. None of them are the right one or the wrong one. None of them mean that you can definitely be an entrepreneur and you definitely can't. We all have elements of all four of these profiles within us. I can see you, Kimber. That's cool. We all have elements of all four of the profile types within us. So nobody is just this or just that. And we tend to move between those different profile types depending on our circumstance as well. So sometimes it's necessary to be more assertive. Sometimes it's necessary to be more communicative. Now, one of the biggest takeaways from anything to do with understanding personality profiles is to recognize that we all think that everybody else thinks exactly the same way that we do. We assume that everybody else thinks the same way, communicates the same way, interprets situations in the same way. So as a for instance, somebody else might be more comfortable with conflict than you, or they might just be more direct in their communication with you. And what very often happens is that you will rationalize that by thinking about how would I behave in that situation. So if somebody's, let's say, a bit abrupt with you, you might look at that situation and say, oh my God, I would never speak to somebody like that. If I spoke to somebody like that, it would mean that either I disrespected them, I thought they were rubbish at their job, that kind of thing. So you immediately then apply that to the other person. So you think they don't like me, they don't think I'm any good at my job. Whereas actually the simple fact of it is they have a different style of communication. They don't intend any of the offense that you might inadvertently be taking. So let me crack on and talk you through the four different styles. And please do feel free to chip in with any questions as I go. I know it's quite a juicy topic, this one. So the first profile is, the reason this is called DISC is there are four initials, D-I-S-C. And the first one is what's known as the dominant individual. Now, don't take that title too seriously. It does very much sound as though that's somebody that wants to dominate every situation and dominate every conversation. And it doesn't actually mean that. What it does mean, though, is somebody who is a dominant characteristic is likely to be more on the introverted, sorry, that's bad, so I'll give you immediately wrong information. They will likely be more of an extrovert than an introvert, but they're also very much focused more on results than they are on people. So these are not pink and fluffy people. What you will find is that they're people who are quite driven. They're very results focused. They're very rapid decision makers. These, out of everybody, are the profile who is far more comfortable with conflict, something that they would actually see as potentially a really enjoyable debate, a good, solid, heated debate. Other people could actually find quite upsetting because they feel it's very confrontational. So what to look for in the D profile is somebody who gets straight to the point. They don't have a lot of patience because they love results. So they want to know what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're going to get there. They don't want to know the detail of the nitty-gritty of how to get there. So the advantages of somebody who has a strong D in their profile is they're really good, fast decision makers. That is a great strength in business. They are actually quite comfortable with risk, so they will leap straight into things. The drawbacks are that they don't have attention to detail. So they often need somebody else behind them who fills in all the gaps of the detail, which they kind of forget, overlook, or just can't be bothered with. So they usually need to make sure they've got a really good assistant or somebody like that to support them. They also can find real challenges with communication because they do tend to be quite direct. They can be quite blunt, they can be quite assertive, but they value honesty. One of the really interesting things about this type of personality is that some people find them bordering on aggressive, and can be quite intimidated. They often think that these people are trying to intimidate them. They're kind of trying to be the alpha males of the situation. But actually what these people love is a bit of pushback. They can sometimes test you. So let's think about a sales environment. If you're talking to a potential new customer and they seem to be, really kind of bold, really assertive, they're straight in with their quite challenging questions. What that person would love to see from you is a bit of pushback. So they kind of want to know that you're happy to stand up to them and that you are not going to be walked over. So they're not testing you to see if they can walk over you, because they don't want to walk over you. They actually want to build a partnership with you, but a strong partnership. So they're not looking to be the person in power. They're looking for you to actually lift yourself to match their position of power, if that makes sense. So in a sales type environment, what that D individual wants from you, and if you, I would imagine you can all think of somebody who has lots of D in their profile. I definitely can. But somebody who is bold, direct, straight to the point, has a bit of habit of offending people. I'm sure you can think of somebody that you've worked with in the past. So if you think about a sales environment with this kind of individual, what they don't want from you is a lot of small talk. That they will just see as a bit of a trivial waste of time. They just want to get on with things. They are, as I say, results and task focused, not particularly people focused. So it's okay to do that little bit of chatter and just getting to know people, but actually just keep that really quite short. Otherwise, they might think you're a bit frivolous. So they're going to want that from you. What they're really going to want is just straight to the point presentation. Tell them what they're going to get. Tell them the bare bones, really, of what that looks like. So don't give them lots and lots of detail about this will happen on a Monday and a Tuesday and a Wednesday. This person will do this, and this is how that happens. They lose the will to live, basically, at that stage. So keep it really short, really to the point. What they absolutely love is results. So don't talk to them about, we will deliver, these are all the things they're going to do for you. What they want to know is, but what's the point of that? What will I get? What is the outcome? What's the end goal of that? So a lot of the stuff where you might sometimes feel you almost need to justify, you need to explain what you do, you need to give them all this detail so that you can impress them and convince them that you're competent. And you might think you need to convince them you're competent because they're challenging. But actually, you convince them they're competent by talking about the results that you're going to gain for them and giving them that confidence in how you're going to work together to do that. You should find that somebody with D in their profile will be a fast decision maker. They don't have time to go away and think about things. They're going to ask you everything they want to know there and then. So you should be able to get a fast decision out of this person. And what you want to do is make it really easy for them to buy straight away and get cracking straight away. So what they don't want is for you to say, I tell you what, I'll go away and I'll send you a proposal. I'll send you a report in a few days. They don't want any of that. Make your own life easier. Sack off the reports, the proposals and stuff like that. Just tell them there and then, this is what I'll deliver for you. These will be the outcomes. This is the price. Do you want to go? And they'll make that decision on the spot. So you can actually close really quick sales with the D profile. Now, when it comes to service with the D profile, you're hopefully kind of gleaming already what they're after. They don't want loads of communication from you. Don't send them lengthy reports about what you've been doing. They won't remember all the detail and the nitty-gritty. You might find a challenge with them when they come back to you and say, weren't you going to do such and such? And it may well be something that's never been talked about, and you might feel sort of intimidated into having to agree to that. But actually at that point you need to say, no, that is not part of the deal. I am doing this, this and this. What they will do though is they will remember promises that you have made and results that you have promised. So if you say you're going to do something, you need to do that for the D profile, or they'll get impatient very quickly. What they would like from you is regular but short, punchy updates on where things are up to. So keep them informed, but keep that really quite brief. Just give me that overview. Tell me that stuff is happening, but you take care of it. An easy way to think about it, one of the fun ways I think sometimes to think about, to really get in your head who these people are, is if you think about organising a work party. If you ask the D profile to organise the party, they would basically say, right, let's go here on this date for this many people. And then they would immediately delegate absolutely everything else to somebody else. They've made the headline decision. Everybody else just sort out the nitty gritty for me and don't bother me with it. So that is the D profile. I'm conscious I'm halfway into my time and I've only done one of the 4 profiles. Better get cracking going. So that's the D profile. The I profile is the influencer. You might have seen this in other profiles, sometimes called the yellow or the sunshine yellow. So the I person is definitely an extrovert. They tend to be the life and soul of the party. They are very much people focused rather than task focused. So the strengths of somebody who is an I is that they tend to be enthusiastic, they're optimistic, they're excited, but sometimes overly excitable. They're great with new ideas and new things and bringing people along with their ideas. You know, they can get everybody else really enthusiastic about things, and they can be a real pleasure to work with because of that. They are definitely somebody who really wants to get to know you as a person. They really value friendship and getting to know people and bouncing ideas off people. So they love that interaction with you. The strengths of somebody with an I profile is they get along great with everybody. They're really, really good people persons. That's a real strength for them. The enthusiasm is a fantastic strength. Persuading them about new ideas and, you know, doing new things and new products and new stuff for their business or them, that's actually quite easy because they love that whole the sparkling possibilities of new things. Interestingly, the challenges for the I personality is that they're often very scatty because they've got so many new ideas and all this amazing stuff that they can do, that actually the nitty-gritty of what they need to do right here, right now, can often escape them. Now, one way you will see this is if you're talking to an I who is a potential customer, they may very often forget to come back to you. And this is the classic area where you can lose business because you look at this situation and you kind of say, oh, you know, they're ghosting me, they're not responded, they're obviously not interested. But actually, they're just dealing with the 80 million new ideas that are going through their head. You're probably very definitely on their list, but because they tend to be a bit disorganized, they just haven't got around to coming back to you. So these will be the people where you'll have a really great conversation with them. You'll get on with them like a house on fire. They've asked you lots of questions. You're really convinced that they're going to go ahead, and then they just go completely cold. Well, they've gone completely cold just because they've got distracted. Distraction is one of the primary traits of somebody with the I profile. So what that means for you is if you have talked to a potential customer and they've just gone a little bit cold, or if you're waiting for a reply to an email or things like that, and it's just not happening, don't write them off. Don't think they haven't replied, so they're not interested. They literally will be swamped and overwhelmed by the 8 million other things that are distracting them that day. So just know that there's a really strong chance they still want to work with you. They just need a bit of a nudge along. They probably need you to help them focus a little bit. And there's a very strong chance that they do still want to work with you. So don't write them off. What they need from you in terms of them wanting to become a customer is excitement as much as anything. They will get sidetracked if you go into too much detail. They will definitely want more detail than the D person, just because they're more interested. They really want to, you know, get under the skin of things and get excited about it. So they're going to want more detail from you than the D profile. But actually, if you get into too much detail, you will find you've disappeared off a massive tangent because they've run off with some other idea. So they need some detail, but they need you to also rein them in a little bit and keep them on track and keep the conversation to the product, the service, the discussion you're having at that moment in time. One key thing to bear in mind with the I personality is even though they love people, they tend to be very, very concerned about what other people think of them. So it can be a really good thing to talk to them about other people that you work with, give them examples, and obviously within the bounds of confidentiality. But if you share examples with them of people that you've worked with, the type of people that you've worked with, the type of businesses that you've worked with, that will tend to draw them in because they love that idea of people. Now, one big thing for the I is that their primary decision-making style is talking. They literally need to talk things through. They need to bounce their ideas off somebody. They can often find it really difficult to make a decision if they're just on their own, or if they just have documents and detail to work through. So don't be surprised if the I says to you, I just need to talk this through with such and such, because they just love to bounce those ideas off people. Now, your ideal scenario is that you give them the opportunity to actually bounce that off you. So keep that conversation going, give them the opportunity to ask you lots of questions, and then you're much more likely to actually help them to make a decision there and then. So that sounding board for them is really, really important. In terms of your service with an I, it's kind of very similar on their perspective, very similar to the sales approach, that they like being kept in the loop because they love to know, they are nosy. They like to know what's going on, but they're very easily distracted. So you do need to keep that quite straightforward. They can disappear off at several tangents when you're in the midst of doing some work for them. So they need you to keep things quite focused. They need you to kind of keep things on quite a clear path. They love everything to do with people. So if you've got other people working with you, they really love to know all of that kind of stuff as well. Your biggest challenge with them from a service perspective is likely to be them disappearing off tangents, them getting distracted. They love for you to make their decisions really easy for them. So one thing you don't want to do with the I is give them lots of choices. So if you say to them, I don't know, let's say you're going to deliver something for them next week. If you give them the option of, we could deliver this or this or this or this, they'll probably just come to a grinding halt because there's so much choice, and their easily distracted brain will just go into instant distraction. In that situation, what you really want to say to them is, we have these 4 options. This is the option that I would recommend, and this is the reason that I would recommend it. So guide them clearly to a path, and they will happily make a decision quite quickly. So help them with their decision making, help them to stay focused, and actually just try and be friends with them, because they really appreciate that. So I think that's all you need to know about the I personality. So let's move on to the S personality. So this is the steady individual. This is your steady Eddie. This person is also people focused, but they are very much the introverted one. So if you almost picture a box, we're moving around a box. We start off with the extroverts at the top, which is the D and the I. The people bit, we're coming down around the people bit. So that's the I and the S. And then we're going to loop round in a little minute. So the S is the steady individual. This is very much the nurturing profile, the caring profile, the pull it all together profile. So this is somebody who very much is people focused, but in a much quieter, calmer way. They're absolutely a calming influence. They're a wonderful mediator. They're amazing to have in a team because they really draw everybody together. They will get to know everybody on a really quite deep personal level, and teams massively value that. Their strengths in a business is that they are absolutely amazing at pulling teams together. They are amazing at putting themselves onto the customer's wavelength. They are fabulous at drawing people together. They are brilliant at pulling together the details that other people overlook. So very often you will find it's an S personality who supports the D, who's off straight away on their new projects and their new launches and things like that. And the S is the person that's trotting behind them saying, you've actually, don't forget, you said you've got to talk to this person. And if you want to launch that thing, you're going to have to do this, 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 and this first. So the S is quite a good planner. Now, they have lots of strength in business. They also do have a couple of challenges. And one of those is that the S is the most risk averse of the 4 profile types. So they tend to need lots of proof and lots of evidence. They definitely are slow decision makers, and they are the classic, I need some time to think about it people. They also really don't like change. So when you combine that with the fact that they're risk averse, says that these people definitely are slow to reach a decision. They do like to pore over all of the information that's going to help them make that decision. And then they very probably want to sleep on it or think it through and just reassure themselves that the decision is absolutely right. So from a sales perspective, what you're really looking to do here is you have to build a connection with these people. If you skip all the personal side of things, they just won't connect with you. If you're somebody who is very fact-based and very results-focused or very process-focused, this person will struggle to connect with you because they really value people and they value depth of relationships. So they want you to build that personal relationship with them. They're likely to ask you more detailed questions than either the D or the I. So they do really like to understand, how does this work? Why do you do it that way? What evidence have you got that this is the right way to do things? Remember, they love proof, they love evidence. Things like testimonials and client stories and case studies, the S individual absolutely loves that kind of things. Kirsty, I'm an SC. When I've had DISC profiles in the past, it's correct for me. Oh, this makes sense, Kirsty. This is why you're such an amazing planner. You need somebody like me to come and help you implement. But you're amazing with people. So yeah, the S needs from you lots of reassurance. They do need time, they do need patience, they do need the nurture element to that as well. Now, in a sales environment, I think probably more business is lost with potential S clients than with any other, because the S person is very likely to say to you, that all sounds amazing, but I just need some time to think about it. And I can't tell you how many times clients of mine have ruled that out. They've fobbed me off. They're not interested. They've said they want some time to think about it, and they're just basically giving me a bit of bull because they're not that interested. And you know what? If this is an S personality, they are absolutely speaking the truth. They want and need time to think about it and time to reassure themselves that this is absolutely the right decision. So what they don't need from you is pushiness. They don't need you to try and push them quickly into a decision. If you do that, the decision is likely to be no. So whereas with the D, you want to give them brief information, give them all the details, give them the price, tell them how to go ahead, ask them if they want to. If you take that approach with an S, you will scare the living daylights out of them. So they definitely need you to be much more nurturing. So you might want to think about, who do you know who you think fits this profile? People that like to take their time, that are really patient, that are quite detail focused. We know Kirsty in here is this kind of personality. So it will help you to think about, who do I know who fits that profile? Because that will then help you to start to recognize which of these profile any of your potential customers are. When it comes to service with an S, you generally will find that you don't have too many issues with an S as a client, because they will ask you questions. They will have gone through all the detail that they need before they come on board as a client. The only thing you might find is, because the S is detailed and diligent, if they feel that you're letting them down with your service, they may not say anything because they hate confrontation with a passion. So they're not likely to tell you that they're not happy with your service. What they'll do is they'll stew, and eventually they will just go elsewhere. They will just tell you that they're going. So you need to make sure that you are keeping on side. So a customer who just seems like a really, really happy customer because they never give you any hassle, they never ask you any questions, they're just totally ace, they always pay on time because they're diligent. Those customers that fly under the radar, very often they can be the S client, because the S does not want to be a nuisance. But just make sure that you're always nurturing those people in the same way that a D might ask you what's going on and you have to jump to answer. The S is likely to just sit back very quietly, and you can forget that they're there almost. You can kind of take them for granted. So just make sure you don't take any of your clients for granted. And the perfect thing is that as long as an S is happy, they'll stay a customer for a long, long time. They don't jump around. Kirsty, I often say to people, I'm not in a rush. I just need this information from you. And I do not need a long phone call for it, just an email with these specific answers. Yeah, because you've got specific questions. I just want these details. You don't want to be sold to at that point. You don't want to pitch. I'm just reassuring myself through these points. Do you know the key thing about all of this, if you think about it, is take your customers at face value. And very often what happens is a customer will come through and say, I've just got these questions. And at that point, you make this assumption that they need more detail and they need a picture, and I must give them this and I must give them that. But, you know, if we don't overanalyze things, don't interpret what they're saying to you, just actually respond to the specifics, that will keep you in very good stead. So the last, but definitely not the least of the 4 profiles is the C profile. Kirsty's already given it away. So the C is the conscientious individual. And these people are amazing with detail. So we've gone round our square. So we're back onto the left-hand side, which is task. And we're down at the bottom, which is introvert. So these definitely are quiet people, really task focused. Your classic kind of professions for your C profiles are things like accountants and IT bots. These are often people who would very happily work alone in a darkened room for hours on end. They can often find people quite a nuisance. People can be just a distraction. They're often too loud, far too conversational, destroying everybody's focus. The strengths of the C individual is that they have a fabulous attitude to quality, they have really high standards, and they're incredibly thorough. They are the people who are likely to buy a new gadget and sit and go through the instruction manual diligently, whereas the D has probably put that straight in the recycle bin, the I has forgotten where they've put it, the S has probably filed it in their special folder for all of their manuals. The C's not filing it away until they've gone through every little bit of that detail. So their strengths, as I say, is brilliant with processes, absolutely brilliant with processes, great for service, great for quality and things like that. The challenge for a C in business is that this detail focus can actually really bog them down. They can be massive perfectionists so that they just don't get on with things. Their standards can sometimes be unrealistic and actually get in their own way. So I know my own accountant talks about a story where they had a staff member who spent almost a full day trying to reconcile a 30 pence anomaly in a set of accounts, rather than just, you know, passing a speedy transaction, just kind of go, yeah, you know what, we're there or thereabouts. That's absolutely acceptable. Yes, if it's more money, then okay, we need to spend that time. But spending a whole day to find 30 pence, that's definitely overkill. Now, what these people will want from you in a sales kind of environment is loads and loads of detail. They're going to love the nitty-gritty of what systems do you use, how is that done, how often is that done, all that real detail. They love that. Now, sometimes the C can be quite interesting because they can be mistaken for a D. Because they are task focused and because they are introverted, sometimes they can seem a little bit blunt. But it's because they want the detail. They just want to get into the nitty gritty. So they don't want to talk around topics. They also don't need lots of the personal kind of stuff. Again, they would just see that as a little bit trivial. How does that help us get this job done? So they don't need loads and loads of personal stuff from you. But unlike the D, they don't just want to get straight to the point. They want all that detail. How does this work? Let me understand the process. Take me into the nitty gritty, to the heart of this piece of work. How do they make their decisions? With great detail. They are the type of person that may well say, could you clarify all of that for me in an email? Could you send me a proposal? Because they want to go through it again in detail. So it might be, and I generally encourage you to avoid proposals and follow-ups where possible, because actually it just adds layers and drags things out. But if somebody who you feel is really detailed focused, if they ask you for a follow-up email, it may well be that that's the tool for them to get themselves into that place where they feel confident to crack on and make that decision. So don't feel that that is a fob off. They will make their decisions when they're ready, and they tend to not necessarily be pushed into it. They are a little different from the S in that the S will feel quite uncomfortable if you push them. The C won't particularly feel uncomfortable, they just won't feel ready. So they will make their decision in their time. So they may need a couple of nudges to just shimmy them along. And in terms of a customer and how to keep things going with a C customer, potentially they're some of your easiest customers, actually, because they do regularly ask their questions. If they want to know something, they'll tell you. They don't tend to just harbour things and worry about it. They tend to be quite open. If they've got a question, they want it answered because they crave that detail. So you should find they're relatively easy to deal with. What you might find is that there might be a bit of a pest. It might be that you get too many questions from them, but that then gives you the opportunity to think about the style of your own service. Think about ways that you can present them with a lot of information without having to reinvent the wheel every time. So it might be that the C can prompt you to create guides or information pages or FAQs or different things like that. So they love to have information to go to. You do just need to be careful that you don't kind of jump to their absolutely constant questions, even if it's a case of booking in a regular update with them. So they've got that opportunity to regularly ask you, but they're not peppering you with questions that actually turn into a complete distraction for you and your business. So I'm conscious of time. I do need to crack on. So the key thing to bear in mind, as I've said, is there is no profile that's right or wrong. And we are all a blend of all four of them. So that is absolutely cool. It's not the easiest thing in the world to recognize other people's profile type. But if you think about people that you know through each of those four categories I've talked about, that will definitely help you. But also, if you think about, is this person leaning more towards task or more towards people? Are they more extroverted? Are they more introverted? Those things will give you quite a good glimmer of which profile somebody might well be. But the key thing, as I've said, is don't assume that everybody is like you. Don't apply your own thought process to somebody else's behavior or responses. Do take people at face value, and don't be afraid to follow up with people, because very often it's the follow-up that they need so that they can actually develop the confidence to make a decision. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I've got a phone call in 2 minutes. Unless anybody has a very speedy question that they need me to answer. If you have any questions, if you watch this back on replay, I'd love a little hashtag replay just to know that you're there. But if you have any questions, if you watch this later and you have questions, please feel free to put those into the comments, and I will very happily come back and answer those for you through the day, over the weekend, whenever you like. The next one of these, I think, is happening 2 weeks today, talking to Dave Bradburn about what is branding, what does it really mean, how do you get great branding for your business, and is it really more than just a logo? So tune in again in 2 weeks' time. And yeah, drop me a message, stick a comment in. Please feel free to DM me if you have any specific comments or questions, and I will catch up with you all very soon. Thank you, folks. Have a great Friday. Goodbye.